Welcome on in, guys. Three bold takes again. I am one of your hosts, Freddie. I'm joined by Chase and Quinn. Talking college football again. Bowl season is over with. We're on to the national championship game, but I want to take this time and opportunity to pull out one of my Happy Gilmore moments here. One of my all-time favorite movies. Chase, I was wrong. You were right. You're the best. I'm the worst. You're attractive and I'm not. No, I'm not going to go that far. But here we are, Ole Miss 38, Penn State 25 in an absolute amazing game to me. I mean, there were so many moments in this game that was just electric. Um, Turnovers, fumbles, just a bunch of weird stuff happened in this game. But I want to draw your attention, and that's kind of what the topic of this is that offense takes the peach, right? Offense takes the Peach Bowl and wins, and that was Ole Miss with 540 total yards. Now, Penn State had 506 themselves, so I want to throw that out there, an offense that we didn't think was that great. But obviously, we knew Ole Miss's defense wasn't electric per se, but Jackson Dart, 379 yards, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. That's a big one. And also, Judkins had over 100 yards for 34 attempts for Ole Miss. So, um, initial reactions to this game, Chase, I want to let you go first. You can go ahead and gloat a little bit. Lane Kiffin did win another big one. So, I'm wrong, and my opinions have shifted. So go ahead.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan. I loved watching this game. I thought it was really exciting from start to finish. I think the biggest point, it's not even, I think Penn State played good defense for a majority of the game. I think the biggest problem was your offense for Penn State. Drew Aller coming in, I think he was a five-star prospect. Kid looked horrible, under 50% completion percentage. And at times it was like you're throwing into a wide open field under no pressure and you're 5 yards off from your guy. I think that's the biggest thing. And James Franklin bringing him in, hopefully he goes through a developmental process this offseason that really makes him that number one guy that we know he can be or that we heard throughout his recruitment process. But man, Lane Kiffin at different points, dude. There were some plays. I think he called one with Pegues that was like a fake to him pass to Jackson Dart. Just absolute pull out his Duffy. Lane Kiffin's elbow deep in it. He was going off in this game, pulled out so many different things. And that's what I love about Lane Kiffin is him just really controlling the game from the offensive side. And even when your defense isn't the best, like because I texted you guys from the beginning in the first or second quarter, and just Pete Golding, I was like, oh my gosh, this kid, Pete Golding can't call a defensive to stop anybody for Penn State. And then all of a sudden in the second half, they only have 8 points. You turn it around, and then not only to mention you are getting the number one transfer portal class, and also I think like a top 10 or top 15 recruiting class as well. Not Penn State, Ole Miss has a lot to look forward to. And like I mentioned, they've been killing it off the field and they brought it on the field with them too. Lane Kiffin did his thing. Absolutely. The big three, Judkins and Dart, it looked like Dart was putting it wherever he could for Trey Harris. I don't know. You got two guys that went over 130 yards of receiving. I don't know. I can't say too much more. Ole Miss did great. I think they're a top three team in the SEC next year, maybe even top two. Quinn?
Yeah, I'll start with Ole Miss, man. I feel justified. Preseason, I said Ole Miss would be the number two team in the SEC West behind Alabama. I really liked the direction Lane Kiffin was taking the team, and all that kind of panned out. Like, obviously, they fell flat in their road trips to Tuscaloosa and Athens, but this win is a building block that just adds to the momentum they were already experiencing coming into the game. The dominance they were showing in the transfer portal, pretty decent on the recruiting trail this offseason as well, or this year as well, going through to the offseason. And just to come out and, like, let's not pretend like Penn State was a bad team or played a bad game. To come out and put your will down in the second half to secure a big victory and put that momentum into the next year, I feel confident saying that Lane Kiffin is easily a top four coach in the SEC starting next year. Uh, and it's going to be a battle between him and Sarkisian in my mind for who solidifies themselves as the number 3 guy in the SEC. But he like the coaching job he's done at Ole Miss. Like again, I want to point out that the resources that Nick Saban has at Alabama, that Sarkisian has at Texas, and that Kirby Smart has at Georgia, those resources do not exist to the same level at Ole Miss. But
Mm.
the performance that he's giving you at Ole Miss is, I'm not going to say as good as Georgia and Alabama, obviously, but it's really close. It's better than what you're getting out of Brian Kelly and LSU this year. It's better than what you're getting out of Auburn over the last 3 or 4 years, and those are both programs with better resources, frankly, than Ole Miss, and not to mention Jimbo Fisher at A&M. We've been through that whole story. So huge win for Ole Miss to build to next year. You look at Penn State; it's a tough loss, but I don't think less of them from the loss, if that makes sense. Obviously, I think Drew Aller's got to improve in the offseason going into next year. Uh, you don't have to play in the Big Ten East anymore if you're Penn State. So you've got to build off this, continue to play elite defense, and try to make something out of your season next year as you try to chase a Big Ten title and get yourself in that Big Ten title game. I think they're right there on the short list for contenders again next season. And I got to say, I think this was the game I was looking forward to the most, and I think it lived up to the hype. You could tell both teams wanted to win this game to launch themselves into next year. Freddie, what you got?
Yeah, one of the things I want to bring up here is the fact that obviously it's a bowl game, so it's a neutral site, right? I personally have the feeling that college football should be played on college campuses. So when we look into next year, into the 12-team playoff, if you take this seeding here, 10 and 11, this could very well be, a potential matchup, next year, right? But what if this game's at Penn State? Penn State wins this game, in my opinion, because you look at Jackson Dart and at the performances he had on the road at Georgia. It was not very good. And I'm not sitting here saying that, he's a bad quarterback or whatnot. He just threw for 379 yards. But home field advantage is real. And that's why I think the 12-team playoff, and for Penn State's case here, where their fans, I don't want to say necessarily doesn't travel that well, but at a neutral site, it's hard, right? You can't rely on that. But at a home game, I think Penn State may win this game. And so it's going to be an interesting dynamic moving forward, but congratulations to Ole Miss, man, and Lane Kiffin, just on a tear, man. I've always liked Lane Kiffin as a coordinator. I've been inspired by his turnaround in his personal life. It's been a great story. So is Sarkisian, by the way. But it's been a great story. Obviously, offense coordinator at Alabama, always loved him. But yeah, man, Ole Miss, man, they're now I'm not going to sit here and say that they're going to be top 2 or 3 in the SEC next year. But I think there's a very real possibility that could happen, especially with the momentum coming in, especially with the transfer portal, the recruiting class, and everything in between. Now, the next step for Ole Miss is you can show that you can win a game against a Big Ten, opponent when you have 30 days to prepare. Now, do it week in and week out and beat an Alabama, beat a Georgia, beat a Texas week in and week out. And then all of a sudden, we're going to be talking about Ole Miss as a powerhouse. Now, I don't think that's necessarily a necessity, but it just seems like Lane Kiffin can get the wins in the bowl games when he has time to prepare versus week in and week out. Now, I don't know what that means, but I will say this. This is going to be a video in the offseason. I'm going to go ahead and call it. Having an offensive coordinator as a head coach, I think in today's college football means more than having a defensive coordinator as a head coach. Let that sink in. Guys, let us know what you think down below about this game, about Penn State, James Franklin, Lane Kiffin, Ole Miss, what they've got going on. Leave a like, subscribe, stick around real quick for us. We appreciate it. I'm joined by Chase and Quinn. I'm Freddie, and we'll see you guys soon.